What's going on, you guys? TBR here, back yet again with another King of Fighters All-Star video, and in today's video we are going to be shining the spotlight firmly upon the latest EX character to be added into the game with the EX Volume 3 banner, that of course being EX Krohnen McDougal. So in today's video, for those of you who have never seen a spotlight video here on this channel before, basically what we like to do is we like to sit down after some time with these characters, after being able to play with them in a plethora of PVE modes, and go ahead and give our final thoughts on the character in the form of a more formal review. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. I will have timestamps available in the description for all of you, so that way you can check out whatever your favorite part of this video might be, or whatever reference point might be the most beneficial to you. However, what I will say is, just as a fair warning, this introduction where we sit down and break down the kit is typically going to be where I give you the most of the information, and then when we get to the actual footage, that's really just going to be kind of just some general overview thoughts in each one of those modes particularly. However, like I said, timestamps will be available, but definitely make sure that you check out this introduction if you want my full thoughts on the character. So with that being said, we got a lot to get into. Krohnen is a very detailed character, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. So the first thing that I want to go ahead and start off with is of course going to be the typing and the leadership ability, correct? So when it comes to the leadership ability is going to increase EX fighters' attack by 40% and their critical rate by 12%. This is something that you're almost never going to use, and it's not anything that we're going to spend much time on. There are much better leaders out there. In particular, for Mr. Krohnen, he would typically like maybe an EX Kyo, or even if you're on a budget and you have the option of using a character such as Eileen from the Seven Knights collaboration, or any character that's going to be able to buff him to the fullest extent, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, is of course going to be the way you're going to want to go. His leadership ability in general, you're really not going to use for much of anyone or anything, so we can just go ahead and move on from that. When it comes to his typing, EX Krohnen is going to be a purple defensive type fighter. As a purple defensive type fighter, this of course makes him extremely strong for high levels of reviving Hell's Dungeon. In particular, this is going to be a character that is going to trivialize reviving Hell's Dungeon even more so than it already was with the lament of things such as the Street Fighter characters. This is in particular going to be because of the fact that he does have that explosion, as well as the immunity and the different things that this kit has on it that are going to lend themselves to reviving Hell's Dungeon. So if you're somebody that needs help there, I've already had a ton of people in my Discord report being able to clear reviving Hell's Dungeon for the first time because of him in particular. So this is something that he is going to help you out with quite a bit. So overall, the typing, while a lot of people have made a big to-do about it, being that a lot of people preferred to see him as a non-purple defensive type, I do think that it actually plays to his strengths very well. So when it comes to his tags, other things here we can talk about, he is an extreme type fighter, so of course that's a big deal, but he also has the 1+9,999 and the nationality unknown tags. These are very important, but he also has a nest tag. So this means that this is going to be a character with a lot of flexibility. He's going to fit into a lot of different team slots, and in general, he plays well with a lot of different characters, despite what his lore might tell you. Now, with all that out of the way, let's talk about the cores, right? So when it comes to EX Krohnen, he is a character that has a lot of moving parts, no pun intended. So we're going to go ahead and just go through here. So first off, he does have that 30% power charge rate increase. You'll love to see it. That's pretty much standard on any meta character such as this. We have this critical damage rate increase by 18%. We have our critical rate increase by 4%, so on and so forth. Really, these basic cores aren't anything that we need to sit here and discuss. The biggest things are, of course, going to be that 30% power charge rate, but you always love to see a character that is based around things such as damage, attack, and crit. That's usually a recipe for success. So, the big thing that we need to dissect is going to be the exclusive cores, right? So the first thing here is going to be Controlled Arm. Controlled Arm is going to decrease active skill cooldowns by 0.2 seconds upon landing a hit on a burn target. This in particular is very important for him. He does have Explosion on his kit, so you'll have to play around it. We'll talk about that a little bit, even though it's not anything that really comes up that often once you get the hang of him. but basically having this ability to decrease his own active skill cooldowns. This is another meta type core that we see on a lot of these characters. So in general, anytime you see this, it's nothing but a benefit. Increasing your burn damage by 120% for 5 seconds upon landing a critical hit. This character loves crits. This character has a lot of multi-hits, and he does obscene amounts of damage in record time. So in general, this is another really good core for him. Upon landing Heat Shield EX, he resets Fusion Blaster charging and the cooldown and increases damage dealt to the target by 25% for 5 seconds on a cooldown of 12 seconds. So basically, this character does play around with his resets and his cooldowns quite often. This is something that you're going to see throughout the footage whenever you see the footage of me playing with him. But I'm sure if you are someone who has him, you've already noticed this. This is a big selling point of his kit. Being able to have this decrease of your own skill cooldowns upon landing your own active skills, as well as having this reset here, particularly on Fusion Blaster, which is going to be, in my opinion, his best skill, is very, very strong, and you see it come up very often. That's why a lot of times you're going to see people, and you're going to see my rotation with this character's skills, particularly on the Awakening. It is going to be it's going to be 3, 1, 2, 3. So I usually go with the third skill, which is your Fusion Blaster, then 1, 2, 3. You'll see a lot of people do that. That's usually what you'll see people do for the rotation, and that's to do with this. So good stuff overall. Now, when we get to the final core here, we have Return, right? So Return is going to grant you immunity to Petrify and Darkness. So this is a big deal in particular because in things such as Nightmare Geese's Guild Raid, this is going to come up quite a bit. Being able to have that darkness immunity is very important to this character, because basically what that means is this character, if he gets caught in that ground aura, is not going to take anywhere near the amount of damage that most characters would. So that's very important. The Petrify thing doesn't come up very often, but when it does, it is beneficial. He also recovers 15% of his HP when attacked with an ultimate move on a cooldown of 10 seconds. This doesn't come up as often either. This is another thing that really doesn't come up much at all, to be honest, but it is something that is there as an extra way to keep your character on the battlefield. So really, it's one of those things that's just kind of there, but it's nice to have. Now, when your HP is 30% or less, you become immune to damage for 3 seconds. So you have some damage immunity there when your HP drops below 30%. We've seen things such as this on characters such as Street Fighter characters. This has a cooldown of 12 seconds. I don't think I need to explain to you guys how important that is in things particularly like Tower of Trials in the higher levels, where this character is exceedingly good at being able to survive. This character, in fact, I've shown you guys in my showcase video, I was able to get this character to basically live through the 90th floor of Tower of Trials up until I think about 2 or 3 minutes left on the clock. And even then, he was nowhere near close to dying. I just decided I was done with it. So, you know, this character's survivability in that mode in particular is very impressive, and it continues to get better as we go through the kit. With a 30% chance to become immune to damage for 4 seconds when you're attacked on a cooldown of 15 seconds right below it, you begin to see how much sustain this character has. This character is very bulky for the amount of ridiculous damage that he's able to output, and that is something that's very important to point out about this character. You are getting a ton of bulk and a ton of saves, so therefore you're getting a very tanky character for a character that is going to be able to output the amount of damage that he's able to output. So this makes this a character that's very user-friendly, as well as a character that you don't have to baby as much as some of these other glass cannons out there. So really, that is going to be the cores. Like I said, this is pretty much going to be a menagerie and a who's who of things that are extremely strong in this game. So I don't think I really need to go into any more in-depth discussion on any of these, because I'm pretty sure that at this point, if you've been around the game long enough, you'll pretty much know just how strong the combination of all of these things are. So let's talk about the skills, because of course the skills are going to tell the rest of the story. So the first thing we'll come back to concentration. Trust me, we're going to talk about it. But first I want to talk about the normal skills. So let's talk about the skills. So the first thing here is we're going to have Blaze Thrower. This is going to be your S1. This is a projectile skill, and it is going to have the following effects. It's going to increase your attack by 70% of your defense for 7 seconds when using a skill. Using this to apply Infernal Flame to all enemies for 8 seconds. So basically you're applying Infernal Flame to everybody on the battlefield for 8 seconds. This is really, really good. Basically, with this, you don't even need to connect with everyone. You just connect with one person or nobody. Just proccing this effect, you're going to be able to apply that Infernal Flame to everybody on the screen. Really, really nice. However, you're going to notice he has Petrify. So you're also going to petrify all enemies for 2 seconds on a cooldown of 7 seconds. This can be a double-edged sword, particularly in time attack. Petrify at times can be one of those things that isn't necessarily ideal for that type of mode. However, in anything else, it's actually pretty good. So it isn't necessarily the best thing in the world for CC, but it's still very, very, very good. So other things here, as far as the S1 is concerned, you're going to notice that the animation on the S1 does have an off the ground. However, it is not full screen. You're basically going to need to jump forward about 2 character lengths in order to connect with the full damage. Like I said, you'll be able to apply the Infernal Flame, as well as being able to go ahead and petrify the enemy, but you will not get your damage proper unless you are a little bit closer to them. So keep in mind, it is not a complete full screen skill, but that's basically what you've got going on there as far as the S1. Now on the S2, this is going to be Heat Shield EX. This is going to be a strike skill. So let's take a look here. Basically, we use this to increase our attack by 40% for 7 seconds. Also really good. We use it to apply Infernal Flame to all enemies for 8 seconds. So again, we have another application of Infernal Flame. This is very good, especially considering that we do have that explosion coming up on the S3, and we also are going to have a reset on that explosion. So being able to apply burn twice on this kit with 2 separate skills is very, very good. Now we have a PvP exclusive here of a 50% chance to remove the target's hyper armor or critical hit shield upon landing a hit. Of course, in championship and things of that nature, this can be devastating. So really, this skill, very, very strong. But when it comes to the overall skill animation, this is going to be a strike skill. It's got off the ground, but again, it is not going to be a full screen. This is one that you're going to also need to be a couple of character lengths forward from the maximum amount of distance from the enemy in order to be able to hit them with it. So keep that in mind. It is not a complete full screen. Couple character lengths in there and you'll be in good shape to hit that for the damage. But again, very good stuff. And again, if you notice, you do have the verbiage here telling you that you can use this to apply the Infernal Flame to all enemies for 8 seconds, so you do not need to connect it in order to apply that. You just won't get all of your damage from your skill. So let's talk about Fusion Blaster. Now this is of course going to be his best overall skill. This is going to be his charge skill. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So it is a charge projectile skill first and foremost. This has a restand to it as well. So it has off the ground, but in the form of restanding the opponent, right? So keep that in mind. Now, this can be used when attacked. It's limited to standing, airborne, or knockdown. So again, this is going to be one of those interrupts that's basically universal. You can use it pretty much anytime you want, which is pretty much as you could possibly ask for from any type of save such as this. So really good stuff. Now, of course, this also has your hyper armor on it for 4 seconds, and that is going to be what the base skill is doing. So this is really nice because basically what this means, if you're trying to dance around your explosion, basically as long as you're not charging the skill, you should be in good shape. But let's continue. Right here, as far as the middle tier, the active 3 mid tier for the charging skill, I don't know how you want me to verbiate this, but that's basically the second stage of it that we're going to be talking about here. We're going to be increasing the target's damage received by 30% for 6 seconds upon landing a skill, and dealing burn damage equal to 4.5 times of the remaining burn damage, and removing the burn effect when attacking a burned enemy, with a PvP exclusive of removing the target's shield or damage immunity upon landing a hit. So basically the middle tier of this is going to give us that 30% to the target's damage received. You'll love to see it, but we're also going to be getting that 4.5 times explosion. Now, this is something that is going to increase itself. Don't worry, I know a lot of you out there want that 5.5 times. We'll get there, but very good stuff for the middle tier of this charge skill. And then when we get to the PvP exclusive, removing the target shield or damage immunity upon landing a hit is pretty darn good as well. So in general, this character in PvP, an absolute monster, as I'm sure any of you PvP players are well aware. So let's see what happens when we max it out. So this is the maxed out, fully charged S3. increases the target's damage received by 40% for 6 seconds upon landing a skill. So our multiplier there goes up by 10%. So pretty good stuff, but it gets better because our burn explosion also goes up to the 5.5 times explosion. So with that being said, this character can do some obscene damage on his awakening rotation. In fact, his awakening rotation ends up being one of the best overall awakening rotations to ever release for a character as far as being able to cycle through skills quickly. So this character has a lot of really good tools in his toolbox, and he does a lot of things extremely well. So this right here is very flexible, this charge skill. It gives you the flexibility of not having to use the explosion if you don't want to. It also allows you to be able to use the explosion reliably if you want to, and it allows you to be able to play up that decrease of your own skill cooldowns on your cores for landing a skill or an attack on a burned target because of that. So it's really, really flexible and very strong. In my opinion, this is his best skill in general. Another thing that's kind of weird about the animation on this skill to keep in mind is a lot of times when you cast this, if the enemies are close enough behind you, this will also catch them. Keep that in mind. So when you're mobbing, that can sometimes come in handy. So kind of play around with it. It's about a couple character lengths worth of range on that, but it is pretty good if you can catch those pesky guys that might have rolled behind you or what have you. So that is going to be the normal skills. Let's talk about the finishers, because when it comes to the finishers, there's quite a bit to talk about. So the first thing is going to be the core finisher, right? So the core finisher is going to have a 70% chance to reset the active skill cooldowns when using a skill. So basically you cast the core finisher and you have this 70% chance to reset all of your cooldowns. That's huge, and I don't think I need to explain to you why. Now, that is one of the biggest boons to this character's kit. You can extend your damage and your combos this way. Now, of course, the core finisher, being the fact that it is tied to concentration on this kit, it is going to be extremely short. However, that actually plays to its benefit, not only for the concentration skill, but also for the fact that you are going to be able to go back into your skills with him. And again, you always want to be casting skills with this character, because typically you're going to be using a fugitive set on him for the most part, depending on where you're at and what you're playing. And if you're doing so, having the ability to access your skills as much as possible to keep your PG bars going, so that way you can get your awakening rotation to max and get that max mode damage. Basically, that is going to be something that is going to help you out quite a bit there, even if you had to be forced into a position where you had to cast one of these finishers in a tight spot. You can still get those skill cooldowns and be able to get that PG bar back whenever you use it. So that's really good. Now, the finisher for the for the 3PG is good in certain regards, but it isn't great. The reason for that is it's a very short finisher as far as the animation. So that's going to be the first thing you're going to need to kind of get past. That's really the biggest downside to this kit. And if we're talking kind of an average length finisher being the biggest downside for a character, then that means that character is pretty darn good, right? Especially when you consider the fact that in Guild Raid, we've talked about this, most characters, if you're soloing, right? So say you're using Akuma to solo against Omega Rugal. Typically speaking, a solo against Omega Rugal with an Akuma is going to be between 5 and 6 minutes, right? Because his finisher is going to be so long, he's dragging out the fight. With Krohnen, it's going to be 3 minutes tops, right? Because you don't have that long finisher on any of these finishers. However, you're doing almost as much damage, if not more damage, depending on how much you've invested. So that's ridiculous. It really is. It's about half the time for almost as much damage, if not more. So it really doesn't matter if you have the long animation for most things, unless you're playing a mode that particularly wants for that. But really, Krohnen, I think, circumvents that, flips it on its head, and makes it something that really doesn't matter. Now, of course, when it comes to the 3PG finisher, we do need to talk about the fact it does have an effect, so we'll kind of talk about that here. So this is very important. On the 3PG finisher, the best aspect of this thing, it recovers your HP by 8% when using it. This is very important for his sustain. It plays into a lot of different things, and really this is going to be another boon to this account, or to this character. So he's a boon to my account, I can tell you that. But in general, I think that this is something that is going to be very beneficial for him if things like Daimo's base ever come back and so on and so forth. But I'm very happy he has this heal. anytime I see a heal on a finisher, I'm happy to have it. So that is there as well. This does have really good shield shred if you have the proper dot applied as well, so keep that in mind. Really good on that. This character's overall shield shred on any guild boss with the right dot, even without the dot, is really, really good, especially with the right dot, and we'll talk about that more here as we get into the setup for the character. So, we've talked about the kit. I think we've gone over everything there is to talk about all the basic skills. I want to talk about concentration real quick. So if we go to the cores and we talk about his options, he has Ignite and he has Concentration. Now, Concentration obviously is what I went with, and that's what most people are going to go for, right? So let's go ahead and talk about it. So this is going to be an interrupt, and it is going to be limited to standing, airborne, or knockdown, so really it's not limited to much of anything. With a PVE exclusive of resetting all of your active skill cooldowns upon using it, right? But then it has this very interesting effect. You're going to decrease Infernal Prominence's skill cooldown by 100% for 6 seconds, and charge 10% power every 1 second upon using this. While Concentration Finisher is activated, Max Fusion Blaster skill will be activated instantly. So with this, basically, the thing about Concentration on Krohnen is it's really nice that he has this, and it's very interesting the way that they set it up. The problem is whenever you use it, it has a 30-second cooldown that it applies to your Awakening rotation, which is a long time. And so whenever you go to use this, particularly in things like Guild Raid or whatever the case may be, depending on what mode you're in, it might make or break you more. But if you're in Guild Raid as an example and you use this, it's not necessarily the best thing in the world. Really, with this character, you want to, again, usually have Fugitive set, you want to have max bars, you want to be able to have the ability to get that max mode activated at 5 charges. And with this, while it isn't anything that's necessarily going to detract from that, this takes away from your Awakening rotation in a big way, adding that 30-second cooldown. So I personally am not a big fan of using this in most situations. While it is a nice gimmick, and it's really nice to be able to get those finishers one after the other, after the other, after the other, and you could even say that you could use this as a way to maybe extend the clock a little bit, I haven't really found the need for it, the necessity for it, or really anywhere where it's going to be ideal to use all the time. So it's one of those things that you might sprinkle in and use every once in a while, but I don't think that this is going to make or break the character, nor do I think that you need to max out the character at 5 stars in order to just get something like this, because I don't think it's going to make as big a difference as you might believe. So in general, with this, I don't think it's make or break for him. It's really nice that he has it, it's really good, but I would have liked to have seen that cooldown be a little bit lower. But I see why they did it. It was a balancing decision, as much as they balance any character, right? So it is what it is, but that is something I felt like I needed to go ahead and share. So let's talk about equips, now that we've talked about all the different skills. When it comes to equips, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. You have 3 different sets that I would recommend. I would recommend the Fugitive set first and foremost. He makes the most of this set. This is going to be the set that was basically tailor-made for him. You're going to have to play differently with this character or any character going forward that you attach this to. However, basically with this, being able to get that 100% damage increase multiplier to your Awakening rotation whenever you are in things such as Guild Raid is just bonkers, and I would highly recommend that you guys get this set. Make sure that you guys pick this set up. Just like whenever this guy came out, I told you guys make sure you get it or else you might regret it. Well, you definitely want this. It also adds a ton of CP to the character, so with this one, I would say that it is definitely something that I would recommend for him, and one of the best overall sets, if not the best overall set in the game for him currently. Now, the next one that we're going to talk about here is going to be this guy here. Now, basically, the successor set is really strong as well. I don't think I need to explain why, and I would say that this is another one I would highly recommend for this character, especially if you do not have the Fugitive set. I would recommend this one, but if you didn't have this and you missed out on it, again, I recommended you guys get it, so if you did, I'm sorry, but I told you so. If you didn't get it, or you don't even have Fugitive set, which is currently still around, then you could always go the route of this guy right here. This is the free set we currently have. Highly recommend this one as well. This plays very well to things such as his explosion, if you take a look here. So being able to increase that burn explosion is going to be really nice. So I would recommend any one of the 3 sets here. If you don't have either of these, don't worry, you can pick this one up for free right now, so you shouldn't have an excuse. Now, as far as option cards, he has this exclusive option card. This is going to increase your burn damage dealt by 60% for 5 seconds upon use, decreases your skill cooldowns, and increases your attack. This is another one I would highly recommend. I always recommend that you guys get the exclusive option and the finisher for any of these characters if you're planning on investing in them, so make sure you pick this up. In my opinion, you want it on him. Now, beyond that, I do have the Shermie option here for one reason and one reason alone. That's it. I wouldn't recommend it outside of this, but I have it here for one reason. Otherwise, I would go ahead and just use some sort of other skill down reduction card on him and anything else besides what we're about to talk about. But the reason I have this here is because this I highly recommend against Nightmare Geese. If you're someone that is trying to solo using Krohnen and you're going up against Nightmare Geese, attach this to this character. Anytime you get a character that has a ton of really good shield shred and multi-hits, typically speaking against Nightmare Geese, this is going to be very beneficial for them if they don't have the proper dot, being Shock. If you put this on him, he is going to go to town on Nightmare Geese, and that shield should not be much of a problem. Really impressive stuff with this on him there, so that's just something I wanted to toss in as an aside. So outside of that, that's going to be the cards again. I would recommend any one of these 3 sets, depending on what you're trying to achieve, but my personal favorite is the Fugitive set. You can pick whichever one you like. Trust me, Krohnen doesn't care. He'll get full use out of them any way you go. So when it comes to stones, I recommend that you guys try to go for burn stones here on the corners. So if you can get a hex burn stone, and you have maybe even from EX Volume 1, I believe it was the circle stone. Somebody can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I believe I'm right. I believe the circle stone for EX Kyo for his banner was an increase to your burn, kind of like what we've got on this middle stone here with the burn damage increase for your EX fighters. So if you have that, attach that to him. Keep this one here for the increase to your burn as well. Get yourself a burn stone here. I've just got the the 1 plus 9,999 stones. I hate that name, but I basically have these here for him as well. You guys can use these. Otherwise, he does also have the nationality unknown tag, so you could always use one of those stones if you don't have 2 of these. Whatever you want to do. Otherwise, just try to buff his burn some more. But typically speaking, I would recommend burn stones here if you can do them. Like I said, a combination of the EX ones and the R stones, and you're in good shape. I personally didn't pull on Kyo, or at least I didn't get Kyo, so it's one of those situations where I'm making do, but I would recommend if you guys have it, try to attach as many of the burn stones here as possible, particularly the EX ones, and that's going to be really good on him. Again, anytime you have that explosion, that's going to be pretty much the rate you want to go with, because honestly, most of the time that's going to be the best in slot. So I think that basically covers the majority of this character's kit and everything I wanted to talk about as far as the build and all that stuff. You know, at the end of the day, this is going to be one of the best characters in the game, period, at this point, so I don't think that any amount of explanation is going to do him justice. I think that you guys just need to see him in action, so we're going to jump to it. I'm going to show you guys my fame real quick, just so you know exactly what's going on there. But that is going to be my fame there, so that's going to be my purple fame, for those of you wondering. And with that being said, guys, we're going to get to the footage, and then I will be on the other side to give my final thoughts. So you guys enjoy, and I'll see you in a few minutes. With the exception of Petrify being present on his kit, which can at times become a double-edged sword against some mobs, particularly in time attack, thankfully Krohnen is absolutely wonderful in this role. Thanks to the fact that he has many diverse options when it comes to not only his skills, but also his XY axis and his basic attacks, Krohnen at times feels like one of the best overall options available for mobbing related situations. Against time attack, Krohnen is going to be able to get you that much needed SS ranking, so long as you learn how to play him correctly, and for the most part, there's very little that you can complain about in this regard. The biggest thing that you could really throw at him is the fact that he does lack the thing that we are going to be talking about the most in relation to his kit, which is a long 3PG finisher, which obviously this character does not possess, and that can crop up as a bit of an issue in specific scenarios. But for most things, particularly again the aforementioned time attack, Krohnen is an absolute wonder and a character that I would highly recommend if you are still in need of help in this regard, because he will get the job done and he will get it done in record time. You can name any PVAI mode in the game, whether it be League Match, Absolute War, or even Chapter of Fight, and there is not a single instance in which Krohnen is not going to be one of the best overall options for all of them. Krohnen is even able to take care of all of those pesky Street Fighter characters that have been running amok in Absolute War and League Match for quite a while now and have been dominating the top ranks, thanks to the fact that this character has knockdowns for days, off the grounds for days, tons of different tricks in his kit, and some absolutely insane damage numbers, as well as the ability to get above 200,000 CP with ease. Krohnen is a monster here and will be for months to come. Let me just start and end by saying, if you're someone who is a new or intermediate player, or just someone in general who has not cleared even one of the Immortals yet and gotten those first time clear rubies, if you're a player that just recently got into the game and is looking for a character that can go in and reliably carry you through all of them, this is the character that you would want to invest in. There is not a single solitary situation where I would not recommend Krohnen against any single one of these Immortals, based purely on the fact that if you were to go ahead and maximize his potential, this character can go in and just breeze through each and every single one by himself. Add to him a couple of team members that are also doing good damage, even average damage, and you will get through that with ease, no problem, no muss, no fuss. All I can say about Krohnen in this regard is he's the real Immortal. Alright, let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room right off the bat and get it out of the way early. No, EX Krohnen does not have a long animation on his 3PG finisher. However, with that being said, there is not a single solitary raid boss or raid difficulty that I would not recommend this character for. The reason I say that is as follows. There are many, but let's start with the basics. The first thing that you want to know about this character when it comes to Omega Rugal is this character does not care what Rugal does to him as far as damage. This is partially thanks to the fact that he has the heal on his 3PG finisher, but it's also due to the fact that this character is absolutely one of the better characters in the game for tankiness versus damage output. So that is the first thing that you definitely want to take into regard whenever you are considering him as an option, whether it be on a solo capacity or as a team member on a team of characters. Now, of course, the more efficient way of approaching guild raid for most people, especially when it comes to cost resource management, is going to be just picking a character to fully invest in to clear as many things as humanly possible. That way you don't have to invest in 3 characters total, especially for players that are non-veterans. Now, if you are of this mindset and of this approach, you will be thankful to know that EX Krohnen is going to be able to facilitate all of your needs no matter what. You don't even have to really particularly do anything special, in regards to Omega Rugal at least, in order to be able to easily one-key any scenario, so long as your account is not going to be brand new and you're investing in the character in at least a moderate amount. Now, when we talk about Nightmare Geese, there's a little bit more to the story. Nightmare Geese, for one, cannot do much damage when it comes to EX Krohnen, so you don't have to worry about surviving. Part of this is due to the fact that he is going to be immune outright thanks to his cores to darkness, so the ground aura isn't much of a problem. Therefore, the biggest thing to keep in mind here is while Krohnen does have very, very strong shield shred, it's hard to take advantage of it without going ahead and giving him a little bit of help. So, if you want to help yourself against Nightmare Geese, go ahead and use the Sure Me option card and go to town. I promise you, you will be impressed with the results. On the other side of that coin, you could also go ahead and just attach the proper striker with the proper dot for whatever it is that you are trying to accomplish, and thanks to the fact that EX Krohnen has such good shield shred, it will not be a problem whatsoever for him to go in and take care of business. Now, of course, none of this is to say that you absolutely need the proper dot. This is thanks to the fact that if you do want to fully invest and overclock this character, the amount of damage that you're going to be able to do is going to be so high, even with the shield up, without the proper dot, that at a certain point, depending on your fame on your account and how much you've gone ahead and invested into the character, it won't really matter at the end of the day one way or the other, and you can just go in and go to town and just have your complete power fantasy with K49 if that is what you so desire. So in the end, all I can say about this character in any capacity is go ahead, try him out, see for yourself. Being the fact that EX Krohnen uses and abuses what in my opinion is the best overall card set humanly possible against the Wary Colossal, that being the Fugitive set,
EX Krohnen is an absolute powerhouse here, and in my opinion is a staple against the wary Colossal for most players. Thanks to the fact that he really doesn't want to use his finishers anyway, he can take full advantage of the fugitive set to dish out tons of damage against the big boy himself. Thanks to his reliability and versatility, EX Krohnen is an easy 9.5 out of 10, and I would highly recommend him to anyone out there, especially those that missed out on Street Fighter V.
Well, there you have it, you guys, the spotlight for EX Krohnen. Now, I gave this character a 9.5 out of 10, and I think that that is warranted. I really don't see much of any gaps in this character's game at this point. I feel like when it comes to pretty much any content, you could bring this character with you and find an excuse to slot him into any team for any reason, just to clear that content just that much easier. I don't really see anything that this character can't really do well outside of, again, stopping the clock and some of the little things we talked about. But even then, the amount of damage that you're getting as a trade-off there really makes up for that in a huge way. So I do recommend him to anybody out there who feels comfortable enough to pull for him, especially with the fact that we might have a collab around the corner, so be wary of that. But this is the character that has come out most recently since the Street Fighter collaboration that I feel the most confident in recommending to anybody, just because of how universal he is and how much he's able to accomplish, how versatile he is. There's so many different things that he can do, and he's just a really fun character, to be honest. He's very original in the way that he works. He's very different in a lot of the things that he's doing with animations and skills and so on. So I think that he's fun. I think this is a character that's very unique, and I think that this is a character that you would enjoy greatly if you were to invest in him, on top of him being able to benefit your account in a huge way. But anyway, you guys, I've talked enough about Krohnen. You guys let me know in the comments section down below what you think of Mr. McDougal himself. If you guys enjoy him, have you gotten him? Have you not gotten him? Let me know in the comments section. But until the next one, you guys, I appreciate you all so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, smash that like button and subscribe. And until the next video, you all take care. Peace.
Continue.